welcome to the show, Difficult Podcasters. Kellie, what's up? I'm Ronnie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I want to keep this quick. I want to keep this slightly embarrassing, but I do need to make mention. This is not if you were listening to us audibly last week, but if you did see the YouTube of our previous episode, my hat was sweating. I was quite embarrassed. I started to think, I talk all this mess about everybody, and yet when somebody watches our show, they could probably be like, look at him. He's so busted. He's so dusty. So I say that to say sometimes when you're recording a podcast, Kellie, as you know, there's going to be bells and whistles that really throw you off. And last week was no exception. We, of course, were doing all of the things and you're rushing around and this, that, and the other. Anyways, my hat was sweaty. I was embarrassed. I looked horrible. And so my thought process was this. First of all, two things. Critique to Kellie for not saying, hey, dude, hey, buddy, longtime friend, you maybe gotta, take care of that. And then the second thing, so that's a knock to you. But what you got? What you got?
Yeah, but no, I was gonna say, but horrible is a bit strong. So from where I'm sitting on where I was sitting, no, horrible was not. No.
All right.
I think you're being a little too hard on yourself for that one.
Okay, as long as you still got love for me. I just was a little embarrassed because Kellie, the thing why I got embarrassed is because on this pod, on this particular Difficult People as a recap, we tend to really give it to people and give it to them good. We, of course, I always say that this show is a delightfully brazen recap podcast. So the reality is we're never mean to anybody. We're more just like, what a ridiculous haircut, or why would you stand so close to me at the counter line at the Walgreens? Don't invade my personal space. So we're really not mean at all. We're just more, we're very snarky is maybe the word.
It's more so use your manners. I mean, come on.
Yeah, don't be a what a stupid thing to say. Don't even look at me. And so I just when all that had happened, I says, oh my gosh. So here I'm giving it, but then can I receive it? You know what I'm saying? Like, can I take the critique? Like if somebody's watching the show, obviously if you're on Audible listening to Spotify, Apple, or whatever, you're not going to see it. But if anyone saw it on our fabulous YouTube channel, they probably, if they knew me, they'd be like, okay, that's cool, it's Ronnie. But here's the thing, if they didn't know me, they'd be like, oh my gosh, with all of his opinions, he couldn't get his shit together. And that I was always like, so I got a little humble pie with that. So Kellie, I say this every time.
I apologize for contributing to that I didn't notice it to the extreme in which you did. So I apologize for that.
Well, the one good thing, and I did say this, I don't know if I said it to you, but I was saying it to somebody else. I'm like, luckily I co-host with the most, not only brilliant, not only most go-getter type of person, but a beautiful co-host, be it Kellie, that I don't think anyone really looks at me anyway. So I think we're going to be okay. But, yeah, sometimes gotta make fun.
I have my bang issues. I got my arm issues. There's all kinds of things going on. So we've got
that one episode.
Looking at us both, being like, "Really, you guys? Come on."
Yeah. I almost feel like there should be a reality show about us trying to get to the point of doing the pod. We are some people that I've done radio a lot. She's done top tier PR work. We've done all these high pressure situations, and yet this stupid podcast is what ruins. You know what I mean?
I know.
I brought a lot of peaceful energy today. I brought some celery, so I'll be snacking on my celery.
Very nice.
Celery juice as well. And I wanted to say I'm excited because we got our second segment. Do you remember our previous segment?
Yes, I do. That's a really fun thing. I'm glad that we're doing that because there are so many unnecessarily difficult things around the world that we just don't need. And this is just like a fun little highlight of that.
So obviously brought to you by ViridianRow.com, ViridianRow.com. They power our podcast here. And so we have a segment. So this one is, of course, Rants is a dynamic podcaster. He's pop culture with all the piss and vinegar. He says it like he means it. And he's dashing around New York City, and he's going to give you a unnecessary difficulty in the best way possible. Let's check it out.
I'm not accepting this. We're well into spring, and we're looking at Christmas displays at a sex shop. No.
Grant, and your rants correct. Why in the heck would there be Christmas decor in the mid-spring, dead of summer? Like, get it together. No excuses. What? It's a pandemic and you can't get your decor put together.
It's a
your window
pandemic and they need the happiness.
No. And also, we'll dive into this one other time in life. Those Christmas during the summer people, you know, those types.
Oh, the Christmas in July.
Oh gosh, no, I don't have the time, Kelly. I don't have the time.
Christmas in July is a very big PR thing because in the PR world, you have to start pitching Christmas in July to make those Christmas issues because of the lead times. So Christmas in July has been a part of my life forever.
Well, then that's okay, but it is the spring, and I like the way Grant ranted. So Grant's Rants, make sure you check him out. He's got a great YouTube channel and podcast, and he's a podcast professional, has worked for all the big companies and his own independent thing. So we thought that was funny, and more unnecessary difficulties brought to you by ViridianRoad.com coming up very soon throughout our episodes. Kelly, why don't you give us this glorious episode? We see some really great cameos, just all in all, a motivating, almost like a capsule episode of a lot of Billy and Julie. I loved it, Kelly. I really did.
I loved it too. And so we are already on episode 6, and this is called Even Later. And I relate so much to this episode because I too am the ultimate procrastinator, which is interesting considering all the hard deadlines and types of jobs that I've had, but I will still push it to the limit and like drive the midnight oil just, you know, to get my shit done. Cause for whatever reason, I just can't do it like early. I can't. Physically impossible.
Do you know what the reason is?
I think it might just be like a psychological thing of just like needing that drama of it to push myself to do the better. I don't know. I really don't, or it's just pure laziness. I don't really know, but I just, because I'm not, like I don't know, I've just always been the same. It's really funny. So watching them go through this episode and you know, being set on doing something and doing everything but that thing, totally relate.
Yeah.
Totally relate. That's like my everyday.
I had one that happened recently and I did go right up to the line, like right up to the deadline. And looking back, it was a beautiful project. I love what I put together. It was a pitch and it looked really good and the people enjoyed it. But why could I not done that? I think it was due on Thursday. Monday, lollygag. Tuesday, lollygag. Wednesday, lollygag. I couldn't get it together. And then, you know, you finally get a breakthrough. So this episode really was good for people like you and I.
It really was. Because it starts out that we find out that they have this meeting with a potential comedy manager.
Yeah.
So they're meeting with this guy. And they're at this restaurant to have breakfast. And I like Julie's comment where she's like, I love going to breakfast where people don't judge you on what you're eating for not eating healthy in the morning. And they're sitting there, you know, doing their little banter. And to them, they've already got a manager. So they're in speak like they've already got a manager. They're good to go. And he's like, you know, hold on. Let's build a relationship. Like, you know, tell me more about you. What do you got? What do you do? That whole deal. Mm-hmm. So he gives them this opportunity to write for a new late night show that was basically kind of commenting and taking everything that all the other late night shows do and just creating something different. So they had the opportunity to write some bits and do a pitch. Mm-hmm. So they're super excited about it. So they are going to leave and go and do this pitch together. And so they're motivated. They're like, let's go write this. We're going to get this done. We have an opportunity to write in television. Let's go do this. And what's the first thing they do? They realize
procrastinate.
They realize when they get to Julie's, it's not the right environment. So they need a different environment.
I wonder if it was the task itself. What do you feel about a recap of late night TV? You know, there was a show that existed later on about that same thing. I like the host. It was a girl named Heather. It was on Quibi. So I like the host. It was through Entertainment Weekly. But I will say maybe if I were to defend Kelly, if I were to defend Julie and Billy and their roadblock, you know, they're so into the comedic scene that I'm sure they were excited and thrilled, but like, do they really want to write late night recappy stuff? Like that's kind of below their level. So they didn't mention it. They didn't complain about it, but I think maybe that's where they're
could be. But do they
roadblock.
really want to write at all? Do they really want to be behind the scenes too?
Oh, do you think that?
Because
No, Kellie.
I kind of feel like I procrastinate the most on things I really don't want to do. Like maybe I think I want to do it, but then I really don't want to do it. And so I feel like I'll even like take my procrastination to the next level when it's something that I know I can do and I know I can do well, but I might not really want to do it.
So do you think
so that could be, it could be that, because even though Julie makes a funny comment where he's asking, are y'all interested in writing jobs? And she's like, yeah, I've always hated pants with zippers.
Oh yeah. Oh, what? No, they said
you can just be at home writing.
I want to get a job that my social skills is like the most important thing as to why I'm in said room. I thought that, but yeah, you strike a phenomenal point that we both go through. You and I is like, or everybody who's pursuing something like. So the question is, do you want to be a writer, a comedy writer? Yes, the answer is yes. Right. But then they don't necessarily think about like what the work that they're doing makes sense. So that's kind of a thing too. I don't know where the roadblocks were. I did like that they got so excited, and I like that they didn't get mad. They didn't get difficult at all. They were so enthused. But if we can talk about for a second environment, how much do you feel like environment plays into your creative energy? And then I'll give you my opinion.
100%. I truly feel like I have to alter my environment for everything that I do. Mm-hmm. And even more so, one of my favorite things about being a publicist is being able to be creative, because essentially it's marketing without money, right? Mm-hmm. So you are just telling someone, you got to check out my client because I'm telling you to, not because I'm paying you to. So it's always having to take a spin on a story, get something interesting, and take whatever they give you and turn it into something that somebody else is interested in. So having to sit there and put something like that together when you're essentially regurgitating the same thing over and over and over and over and over, I always found that I wrote the best stuff or like did the best stuff when my environment was a certain way. It always played a part. And I realized like that was definitely like the number one thing I'd have to make sure was set for whatever mood I was in. It wasn't always just, I need this particular environment every time. It was always different.
Oh, it changed too.
It changes. Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm a crazy person because I'll be in certain situations where I'll feel like, no, like the decor has to be set up, the candles have to be lit. Not that I'm romancing anybody, but I have to like set a vibe. And I feel like I mentioned this recently to I can't recall who, but I was saying if it was just a matter of like waking up, going to 9 to 5, I think the last job I did before a broadcast was maybe like banking was one of the jobs I did. Best bank teller you're ever gonna find. Merchant line, so you could know I was that good. My point is, if I was doing that type of job now, I think I could like, my environment would just be coming to the office or coming home. That environment is now fine because you go do the bank job or whatever the job is, the 9 to 5, it doesn't have no burden on what you're doing. However, if you're Billy and Julie and you're writing within the home, I think those things do make sense. And then I think like we've all had to struggle within a pandemic to like work more remotely. And in my mind, I'm like, I'll be in a space and I'll be like, oh, it doesn't have an accent wall. Daggone it, I need an accent wall if I'm gonna do a podcast, So I got it in that regard. But contrary to people who, if you're working your 9 to 5 and you're like, oh, that's kind of, they're just being procrastinators. I don't think that they were just being procrastinators. I think they needed to thrive in a certain way. I would have also went to all the locations they went to, and it became a fun journey.
It turned into, they had the good intention of going to certain places for quote unquote research. But then once they got there, it was like, how could I sit through this? Like one of the places that they wanted to go was to the Paley Center and watch old late night shows, like episodes, to like the history of, a lot of the old hosts and kind of, get some ideas from that. And they like are trying to sit through one episode and they're just bashing it, saying it was so boring, it was so stupid, it was so this and that. And so they decide to go and do something, go get like a mani-pedi or do something completely off the job thing. But the whole time they're conversating with people, they're conversating with each other, and they don't even realize that they are actually gathering things to talk about just on their walk about the city, because they run into certain people. The first thing that they want to do is go buy a ping pong table because that's what the writer's room, they want it to look like a real writer's room, right?
Yeah.
So they go to this sports store to go buy a ping pong table.
My
And
my favorite part though, Kellie, before you get to that, my favorite part of that whole thing was like, where do we get a where would we even get, is that like a sporting goods store? Just like the detachment of like their world, you know what I mean? Like I was like, yeah, that's right. That's, you should question it. Where do we go? Where do we get this stupid thing? I don't want to go to a place where there's sports paraphernalia and cleats. Oh my God, baseball cleats. I don't want to go to, like, because that's the kind of thing I grew up next to. So I'm just like, ugh. So I thought that was a little funny.
We know Ronnie's love of baseball.
I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't think you should force children to be into that dumb shit and then act like, oh, isn't it fun, Skippy? No, Skippy doesn't like it. Skippy would rather be, broadcasting as an 8-year-old. Stupid. Okay, a tangent.
But I love that the only reason they want the ping pong tables because they think that that's what goes in a writer's room, or they saw it somewhere, not because they feel like it's like they've ever played ping pong, they will ever play ping. It's not, it doesn't have anything
I liked
to do
it
with
though.
them.
I know, I liked it though. I'm gonna be the
but it's the idea of what a real writer's room looks like, right? So you want to, if you put yourself in the environment of a real writer's room, you then mentally become a real writer, right? So I think that's what they were trying to build.
Do you know of is there been an extreme thing you've done in an office or in a home office that you've connected to, where you're like, I have to have this, and no one gets why, but in order to do your work, your creative work, you've had to do. Do you have anything like that?
For me, it was multiple computers. I had to have like 3.
Okay.
Like I always had to have 3 because I needed to be able to. I needed like a whole like NASA station.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You
to
need
be able to kind of like
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
So I could look at decks, so I could research, and so I can also have inspirational things. So I'd have it all go, because I'm a big multitasker.
Ooh, that's tough. Ooh,
so,
ooh. I used to be one. Ooh.
I'm like huge.
I'm shunning you.
I have to do, but my brain like goes at such 8,000 miles a minute that I have to do so many different things at the same time. So,
I'm like a vegan who's like, oh, you eat meat.
I know. But I go through all these things. So I like visually, I need the stimulation. Yeah, so that was my thing. I always had multiple computers around, and everybody's like, why do you need like 6?
Yeah.
I just do.
And I know some people who don't need the creative connection at all. I had a roommate when we lived in Ridgewood, Queens, and which is on the corner of Bushwick. We lived there, and as roommates, we were great roommates, but we lived so differently, both insanely creative fields, and we both worked at the same job. One of the jobs we crossed paths with, but my point is, when I would get into my creative work from the home, it needed to be candles, it needed to be all of these things. This guy, great friend of mine to this day, I would go into his space and I'm like, I mean, there were a lot of computers too, but outside of that, the aura and the essence, I was like, you could work for 19 hours like this? Because I surely cannot. I need my 2 Janet Jackson 11x14 pictures, put catty corner on the wall. Even in my current space now, I got a Joan Rivers 1980s, Joan Rivers at that, posted on the wall. Like, I need certain things to connect. So that is why it was delightful with this episode. That's why I was more like, that's right, you guys. That's right, Billy. That's right, Julie. You do have to do what you have to get. And it led us to go get the ping pong table, and it led us to see Amy Sedaris, and I thought her dialogue was so great because she was like, well, this is I always tell my customers, don't buy anything that you can't sleep on. Maybe he's not the greatest to make me the best sales girl on the floor, but I have a good conscience. And then as the conversation goes, a line that I bring up all the time in my day-to-day life, I'm always like, what the fuck am I here for?
I love she throws well, first, while she's sitting with her spiel, she like tosses it up and then doesn't catch it, which is even more hilarious.
She's so funny.
She missed it, and then she's like, well, what the am I here for? And just like throws the ball.
I went on a binge, as this is the greatest thing about doing this podcast, is like you get excited about difficult people, and then you get into the world. And I've seen a number of the Amy Sedaris At Home with Amy Sedaris episodes, but I felt like going back to them, and it's just kind of like you get into this world of Amy Sedaris can make almost anything work. And she has a really cute anecdote too about like choosing to go with Wheaties or choosing to go with this other thing, because it turns out 27,000% of mercury is too much of a good thing. These lines are so good that you end up saying them in your day-to-day life. And that is one that I say all the time when something happens. I can't recall what it would be, but I'll be like, what the fuck am I here then for? Just because it caught me off guard when she did it. You know what I mean? Like she was just
it was the best because she was so nice and sweet, no pressure, right? She doesn't pressure people into buying anything, and they're like, yeah, I don't think we need it. Well, then what the fuck?
Amy Sedaris, such a true talent, and we see her in multiple episodes in different incarnations throughout the entire series, but this was our first touch and taste of her, and it set everything up, like you said, as their little journey. This is the part where they go try to get the ping pong table. It doesn't really work ultimately, and then the Paley Center, and then
they go to they go get the mani-pedi, and then they go see a movie.
Yeah,
and,
for inspiration purposes. Oh, and in the midst of this, which was odd, or not odd, but unexpected, Kelly, I'm calling Kelly Julie. Julie, you guys have names that are too similar.
I know.
Julie tends to wonder about pregnancy.
Yes, that's one thing I was gonna say. Yes, so it's funny because when they're at the apartment, I was gonna bring up Arthur too, that he's checking on her, what are you guys up to, how are things going, good for you. And one of the funny things that he does is he tells her, text me if you don't want paella for dinner. And she's like, well, consider yourself texted. And then he like whistles out the door, and Billy's like, are you okay? And she's like, why? It's like, because Arthur's whistling and you don't have anything to say about it, like you seem to be fine with it.
Yeah.
And then she stops and thinks about it, and she's like, well, for the past few days I have been in a good mood. She's like, oh my God, and then I missed my period. Oh my God, what if I'm pregnant? And then she goes into the whole thing, and they go to look for a pregnancy test.
I don't know what I say on this regard, because I'm a male, so I don't know that aspect of being like 35-ish and like thinking about those things. But I can't imagine it being an easy thing, especially within their relationship. Billy says, well, do you even want a kid? And her thing is like, no, but like, what if I do later? So I think this is why, and forgive me if I'm wrong, correct me, Kelly. I think this is why this episode was very charming, because we only see Julie as such a selfish person. And then this little bit of nugget, in fact, the way she says it, she's like, oh, nothing's permanent, except for, being a mother. It just is, it allows a little more growth as like, what choices is she going to make? Does she care that much? Does she not care that much? I do like that there was some levity by saying, oh my gosh, I don't want my kid to be well adjusted. I don't want him to be in sports. Oh my God, what if he's not gay? And then Billy's like, no, you
any kid of yours is definitely gay.
As gay as the sunlight, absolutely. So
she's like, what if he tries to high five me?
I will not. Yeah. Don't you talk about the baseball and the Dodgers and the cleats. Don't do it to me, stupid little kid. Just because I like my dogs does not mean I like my kid. No. And so that was a running thing. And I just don't know what I feel about it. I just think that sometimes men, we are so supportive of women, but we don't know what that is like to even think about those things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any children, and I'd always kind of thought about it, but I never really like was a kid that grew up like wanting to have kids. My whole thing is I always wanted to adopt kids. That was always my thing. I never really like had the dream of like being, having my own children, all of that. I always wanted to adopt kids that were, that needed families. That was always my thing ever since I was younger. Really? Well, now that I've gotten, older, unfortunately, which is gross, but but I find myself in a similar situation like that, when you stop and think about it, it's like, well, wait a minute. I don't know, because I've never really sat and thought about it. It was never kind of the goal. And for some people, that is their goal. They want to have a family. They want to do those things. And I just didn't. So
I wonder if it gets more complex now, because
I think it does. I think it becomes more of a thing the older that you get, because there is a time limit, sort of.
Right.
There's a lot more risks and a lot more things involved with it when you get older. So it is something to, and I love that she didn't just dismiss it. I love that she actually stopped and thought about it too. I agree with you there, because, we always find her to be a little like, self-involved and callous, did not really like thinking about anything other than herself.
Yeah.
And this showed a little bit more of the humility that she has, and thinking, I don't know if I'm going to feel the same way in 5 years. And what if I can't? What if this is my only chance? And I feel like, the older that women get, at least amongst like my friends and stuff, like I've noticed that is a statement that a lot of us will think about. Like, what if it happens now and it's my only chance? I'm just going to have to do it. If there's the slightest slightest idea that you might want to, you got to go for it. Because if you don't, what if you never get the chance again? It's a tough thing.
It is a tough one. And on one hand, I feel like she could have been talking to Arthur about this stuff. But on the other hand, it's great that she has Billy. If you think about it, like, you know, a gay guy doesn't have, you know, necessarily it's obviously apples and oranges, but a gay guy doesn't have, you know, they're going through their own aspects of how they're going to conceive children, if they're going to conceive children. So there is a very special thing about, you know, women who, you know, either didn't have children at a certain age or never have children at a certain age, and their relationship with their gay friend. Like, I know that sounds extremely stereotypical, but I always think about, like, you know, in life we're assumed that we have to do all these things, but what's great about the arts is you go live your own life. You do your own creative field. You don't have to have the white picket fence. You don't have to have the dog and the, you know, the 2 point whatever cars, whatever is the story. You run your own story. And so I think I like that Billy goes, even though he wasn't being selfish and he definitely wasn't like overshadowing her, he did say like, oh man, then you end up being one of those people that has kids and then I never see you again. Like, he wasn't mad, but I kind of felt like if I'm a good friend with somebody, I would also say the same thing. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. But like, I love that you're my I don't want to say hag.
Then I gotta find a new friend.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use the word hag, but like, I love that you're my hag. You know what I mean? And but see, this is where the empowering nature, and we'll move on, is the, you know, one of my favorite broadcasters is Bevy Smith, and Bevy Smith is of a certain age, never had children, but yet when you look at her life, it's so gorgeously beautiful. And I think the problem that we all have is when we grow up, it's like, have the house, have the dog, have the white picket fence, and have the kids. And I think what has been exhilarating to me is learning that you don't have to have all those things, including the cleats and the baseball and the glove and all that stupid nonsense. Take it out of my face, damn it. I'm an 8-year-old. Talk to me like a grown-up. You know what I mean? So we're and what is great about this show, and maybe I'm going on a tangent, I'm sorry, but I feel like it's uplifting to know that there's different ways to do things. And when you have your person,
there is. There definitely is. And I love that. And I think one of the things for me that has come into play recently that's very interesting and I never really thought about is legacy. So like, if you don't have legacy, because it's a different way to think about it, because yes, society kind of has always played that, you know, in order to feel fulfilled, you have to have like the family and like everything that you were just talking about. But yes, everyone nowadays is making their own version of what that feeling fulfilled and all of that is. And something that was new and interesting to me that I had never thought about is, you know, my dad passed away when I was a baby. So when I'm gone and I don't have kids, like, that's it. Like, that's the end of us. So it's an interesting way to think about it, because there isn't anything left to go on.
The concept of that too, to contrast it a little, is that what's to say what legacy is? Yeah, if it looks like namesake or lineage, then yes, then what you said was absolutely right. But if it's more about like what I contribute to the world, that's really cool too. You know what I mean? You know, if you contribute.
Well, yeah, but it's also more of like parts of you that stay to keep it going. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a blood kid. Like, it could also be like, you know, like I said, I always wanted to adopt kids, but it's like the teachings and the lessons in the life and the things that you did contribute to the world, and having someone else get it to keep it going for that reason. Like, it just, I mean, it can go deeper and deeper and deeper.
No, this episode got me shook a little bit, because this is what it is. We don't come to this show for anything like that. And obviously we're breaking it down in our own way, but these are things to think about. I remember in my journey in life, I remember being so sort of mortified. I'm like, oh, I mean, in theory, you never know what happens on a Friday night, but in theory, I won't never necessarily like conceive natural children. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm not, you know, with a woman, you know, and you start to like go so much in this anxious space where you're like, you're so proud of who you are and all these things, but you're like, oh, you know, what would that look like? Would I be a single, you know, would I be like an Andy Cohen and Anderson Cooper? Like, you start to like wonder, what is your journey like? Is it going to be when I marry somebody? Is it going to be, I'm going to be a single father? Is it going to, you know, what is it going to be? And I think the one rule to kind of help out is like to fuck off that anxiety, because that anxiety is not healthy for you. And I've come to the conclusion that I generally don't want them, but I've had one journey in my life. It was around 2014, 15, maybe 16, that I was, I don't journal much, but I journaled this particular time. And I said, I like where my life is going, and I would like to have a open mind of like, maybe I would be somebody that would adopt. And that didn't have an inkling of like, would it be with someone else? Would it be solo?
Right. But
And
for you, like
that was
just in
interesting.
general.
It has since went away, Kelly. It has since went away.
But it's, you know, and for me, it comes and goes. It's like, because we've talked about this before. I am not a huge fan of children in general. So I feel like I would need an older kid to kind of like straighten out and mold into it, you know, whatever. But it just, it comes and goes, but it's a very interesting thing in that, you know, when she stopped for a minute to think about it, to me, it's like all these different things all the different ways she could be thinking about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, but all in all, she does think Arthur would make a great dad. A weird one, but a great one.
And he would. But it was a great, and that's why the episode tie-in is good. It's like a little late on, you know, the period, and also a little late on their tasks. Their tasks got exciting, but then there's this moment where she loses her computer. I have not done that, but it was Pride weekend, by the way, and I don't know why I had my backpack with me, but I had my computer in my backpack. I think it was one of those days where you're out in the daytime. I never lost my computer, but I got close one time, Kelly. It was one of those times where you had bounced around the city and then you went out in the evening too, and you still had your backpack from the daytime. And all I could tell you is I could remember is I ended up on the Uptown A at whatever morning light it was, but I don't remember getting on the train, Kelly. And so where I tell you that I feel like it's easy to shun Julie and say, why did you lose your computer? But there are times where you're dancing around that daggone city and I was drunk, of course, but you forget. And I remember, this is what I remember. I'm up near Inwood area, you know, in the highest part of Manhattan for the most part. And the light is gushing at me, still drunk as a skunk, right? And all I could tell you is my muscle memory. My hands were the first sense that I caught. And the reason I caught that sense was because my hands were this tight, and they were because I was holding onto my backpack. So as Drunky McDrunkerson I was, I was like holding on to the backpack
for dear life.
because even in my drunkest moment, I knew that there was a computer in there and I didn't want to just like put it down and lose it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Somewhere she's talking about what she's going to write, you know, they're going through their day and that she lost that computer. And what's so funny is we find out that she loses at the first place that they went to. So how really dedicated to writing was she? If the first place they go to, she drops it at the sports store.
And what if, right. And what if their sex tape is in the cloud? Ah!
Oh, I know. And Billy's like, do you have like nude photos of yourself? She's like, of course I do. Like, that
did make me laugh. I don't want to go on a tangent, but that made me laugh how like the assessment would be like, oh, I don't want to have a poorly it was I don't want to have a poor email of something that I said go public, but a bad naked nude picture would not bug me as much as the shit that I say on emails for other people to watch. I was like, oh my god, you guys are nuts. I love these two. Yeah. Yeah, it was a bit of a journey. And you know, so what do? They go back to the store, the sporting goods store, and they try to find Rita, but Rita's not there. And it ensues more of a wild goose chase, which, like you said earlier too, it created the living part. You know, sometimes to be a great writer or anything in the arts is you have to like live too.
Right. And they get another story. They get another story from the other like store attendant that they meet that calls Rita at home. And, you know, he shares a little NASA story because Billy tries to say that she's a really important executive for NASA and she has to find that computer. She's got sensitive classified material, whatever he studied that she had on it. So he goes into a tangent about his like falling in love with a girl, losing a girl, like, you know, space camp and all this stuff. So they get yet another story of regret because the constant in the stories that they're getting is regret. People are saying that they should have chosen A, they chose B instead. They didn't say no. They made the wrong choice. And now they're trying, you know, now they are filled with regret about those things. So he gets a hold of Rita, and she does have the computer, and she is agreed to meet them that evening at her singing lesson. And
because why not? Of course she's a singer. Of course she is.
Of course. But I love how Billy's like, I did not think Rita could carry a tune.
Yeah. And he's like, you watch your mouth. You know, it's so much, and I like it. But then they get to the restaurant, which gives them about a 3-hour gap from when they know they're going to go to Astor Place and meet Rita to retrieve the computer. And they get another a moment of, what did you just say, like doubt or regret?
They get another story of remorse, regret, whatever. So there is a woman sitting in the booth behind them, and they're talking, and she's going to go to the restroom. So she turns around and like asks them, do you mind if my date comes, can you let him know I'll be right back?
Yeah.
And Julie's like looking at her, and from our point of view, we see she's got some unique eyebrows going on. So she confronts Julie, and she's like, you're looking at my eyebrows, aren't you? You're staring at my eyebrows, aren't you?
So
and
good.
Then she goes into the story about she went to go get her hair done, go get done up for this date, and the person convinced her to get her eyebrows done. And first they darkened them, but they were black. They lightened them, and then they were blonde, and then all of a sudden they fell out. So
she was insecure. As
Mhm.
Anna Gasteyer as the actress, SNL, great. Like she really gave it.
Amazing.
But also, like, yeah, it's this added up moment. I think Billy says to it after, he's like, you never know lonely until you're lonely in New York City. But there is lessons to be taken all of the time. And I mean, I think the lesson of no is valuable. There's like
being able to say no and not feeling like you can't.
Say no because you have the nerve and the audacity and the gall that something else better will come, or also saying no. Here's another one, that because what is yes for somebody else isn't a yes for you. I can recall a couple things where I was like, it felt like I should have said yes, and I did say yes for like a creative project, and then it turned into being terrible because I know what I like. I think when you're young, when you're in your 20s, you want to ask everybody everything. But as you get older, you're like, I'm not going to say nothing until I'm good and ready, because I don't want other people's opinions. The power of no. And I guess that's, they didn't have it yet, but they were starting to get it.
They were starting to really kind of note that theme in all the stories they were hearing for the day. So they were paying attention. Yeah. So although they were procrastinating hard all day, they were actually taking in everything that happened throughout the day. And I think that's one of the most unique things about being in entertainment and being a writer or being a performer or, anything, the things that we do here, is because you have to be observant of your surroundings. That's where inspiration comes from. Yeah. So not, just having a writer's room per se isn't necessarily the best environment if we're talking about what's the best environment for writing. So it wasn't necessarily a room for them to sit in the middle of the day and just stay there all day. It was, they needed to kind of go out and live to be able to, kind of like punch it, to be able to get that package out.
They get through it all, which is exciting. They see Debbie Harry. Rita.
Well, we find out Rita was in the ER. Like, why is Rita in the ER?
But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Rita's being Rita. Rita will be Rita. And just like Billy's look is like, okay. Oh, okay. Oh,
and then Debbie Harry's like, you want to do coke?
Want to do coke? I mean, this is on a day that you set out of your apartment, what is going to happen? And you came to visit me, so we've had some moments where
we've had days like that.
We've even ended up in gosh knows where. I think you had family. We ended up near with them, and I mean we've had some moments.
We have had some moments.
LA moments too. We've had some LA moments too, because of course we've collectively lived in LA together, whereas New York you hadn't lived. But oh my gosh, it just speaks to all of that and the willingness to try everything. And but it's great though, and I loved that they wrote, and I loved the way we see in the scene that it does come to the sunlight, because that's reminiscent of works that I've done that I've kind of messed up and procrastinated on or whatever, but then I like get it done right at maybe like 6 a.m. let's say, but then in the email I do the scheduled email so it doesn't come out till 10 a.m. That way they don't think I'm a crazy person. That was a light, not just metaphorically, because there's just so many times I've done that as well, and then I sleep all day. They sleep all day.
Well, they make it back to the house after all of that craziness and getting the computer back, and they actually decide, okay, it's late, we got to get this done. and they finally like knock out their presentation. But I love we see Arthur again, and he's like, "Text me if you don't want duck for dinner. Consider yourself texted."
Because she likes a children's menu. And that's it.
Yes, she likes the children's menu. I want some paella. Arthur, come cook for me.
Arthur should maybe date Kellie long term. Oh, you know what's funny is when the music started too, in the little montage, Suzanne Summers. But right before that started, they go, and this is in reference to ViridianRoad.com does a shirt that talks about like we could blame the world for our faults or something like that. I think, was it Billy telling Julie or Julie telling Billy?
It was
saying we have to do this because if we don't do this, then we can't blame everyone else's fault for like our not getting the
Billy
job
was
or
saying
something.
it, I think.
And then that little thing lit them up to get going. And I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, because then it's only going to be their fault if they don't do it. There's no one else to blame if they don't do it.
See, they're likable after all. This is what I keep trying to tell everybody. Oh, hey, Ronnie, I've been watching that show you're talking about, and they're just so unlikable. Bullshit, you're unlikable. Don't tell me nothing. Julie is a good gal. And Billy...
Pay attention.
Yeah, pay attention.
But they get it done. They hit send on that email. You hear those shh, and you hear the email go out.
Yeah.
It's all good to go. And then they start doing a little digging on Richard. So they're looking up their potential comedy manager, and they find out some very interesting things about Richard because Richard is Australian. We knew that. And Billy's like, I think I figured out where his, artistic kind of inspiration, where his little artistic background comes from. And we find out something real fun about Richard, something I didn't know even existed.
we know that Julie will hit a kangaroo, and we also know that this manager was Mr. Puppetry of the Penis. It was he didn't say no to his mates and this one deek trick, and then he did a deek trick, and they all did deek tricks, and pow. Did you ever see that show? Kellie?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know why I assumed in my mind, you guys, I'm terrible.
Like, why?
In my mind, I assumed Kellie was going to say, I've seen it. I loved it. I could report about it. And you just said no. And I just didn't know where to go. It was like, Kellie, I'm disappointed.
Sorry. I mean, maybe Puppetry of the Penis sounds like something I would have seen, but no, I didn't even know it was a thing.
Anyway, okay, moving right along. But then they go to
their meeting. They go to their meeting and they pitch their deck, and they get a call from Richard after they're looking him up, and Richard's like, okay, they want to meet with you. They loved your stuff.
Yeah.
So they go to this meeting, and then they find out that he doesn't even look at their stuff. He just needs some diversity. He needs a woman writer.
Yeah. Oh, that like broke my heart too, with the doing the work, and then somebody being so dismissive of it.
So disrespectful, not even looking at it.
I calculate in a lot of the production or radio jobs I've done, there have been things that I had done against my better judgment. I'm like, I don't really want to do it. And then when the person doesn't give it no energy, you're just like, why did I do this? Yeah.
And that's probably why you didn't want to do it in the first place. I
didn't see the follow through. Yeah. Because you could always know. You always see the follow through. Anyways, this guy's funny, but he's also like just faux punk rock. He's like punk rock by Target, that kind of thing. And I love that, even when we get to the meeting, they're enthused. They are generally enthused, but as it goes on, everything he says, becomes this is a statement I say. So in radio, there's a thing called program directors, and this is going to sound really like I'm talking shit, but sometimes I say, how can I learn from a program director that's less talented than me? And so what I'm saying is, in the scheme of him as the position, he was more powerful, but in the scheme of their artistic creativity, they were more powerful than him.
Right.
But then you have to sort of submit yourself to that. And it's not saying you're being a hard worker, but what does that look like in that situation? I've had a situation where, in my mind, at least, and in everybody's mind, I was the king, okay. In my story, that's the way I'm going to tell it, Kellie. But the person I had to report to was such a cornball. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? I mean, I understand being cordial and playing your position, but what do you think that allowed them to make that decision? Do you think they just vibed it out, or?
I think they did. I think the more that they were listening to kind of the things that were just the person was saying, and how not. It's going to come out wrong the way I say, because I don't necessarily mean not a real job. But it almost wasn't a real job. It was just if you want this and you don't suck and you're kind of cool, you can have it. But I don't really know anything about you. I don't know what you can do. I just need a woman. You know, so it really wasn't like a real thing. It didn't play on their strengths. They sit there and then they start having the banter back and forth, which he's totally into. And he's, you know, they're saying, you know, this so-and-so said no, that they had regret. So-and-so said they wish they had done something else. Well, maybe this is our time. Maybe we should listen to them and we should say no. Can you imagine working for this guy? It's like, no. And it's like, you know what? No.
The one thing I know, and he was like, is this a bit? The one thing I thought was cool is that if you were to watch just this episode alone, you wouldn't know that they wanted it this bad. So you would think that they're saying no didn't really matter, but they did say no in a very, like, it was the one thing they wanted more than anything. So it took a lot of nerve. It took a lot of gall to do that. This is why I say this was the Billy and Julie's episode that made them likable, because this was not a thing they kind of cared about. This was literally the only thing they cared about, and they had the wisdom. And I like that their potential manager knew that, yeah, that guy's kind of a hack anyway. You know, he's trying to avoid a Jezebel write-up or something like that. Like, the manager didn't get mad. And that is the lesson that I guess we should all have, is if the person you're meant to work with can handle your shit, even if it's not really shit, but like other people could think it's shit. If the person can see it as shit, that's not your person to work with and collaborate with. If the person could be like, oh, you made that choice because of XYZ. Ah, okay, I see you. I get it. I get it more. And that's a learned thing. And I think Julie and Billy are around 34, 35, done this for so many years. So they're in the right space.
But it's also good because, especially when you're building a relationship with a manager, agent, publicist, anything like that, it's a good kind of getting to know you. And that's what Richard said he wanted to do. He wanted to build a relationship. So looking at what they turned down, if he's a smart manager, which he seemed to prove himself to be, is that he's not going to take it as, oh, I'm losing money because, you know, 10% of nothing is, you know, 10% of something is better than 10% of nothing. But he looks at it like, okay, I see you. I get it. Cool. This guy was shit anyway, but now it's going to make him do his job better too, because now he's going to be able to sift through things and give them better opportunities if he takes it in that way.
I think you have to take your ego out of it, and that's what it takes as a good manager.
It's not going to take away every opportunity if you say no, and if it does, that's not the right opportunity for you at all.
Especially
so you kind of have to go with your gut. Yeah.
Especially
and I mean, there's times I didn't, and I feel like I should have.
Well, because time is money. That's the ultimate thing. Obviously, you need money, but time is money. So you don't want to take yourself off of. It's like playing the slot machines. You don't want to take yourself away from the slots. If I've been hitting the slots, I need to make. I don't gamble, Kelly, so I don't know if that was even a good example. Maybe I could shut up. You take it from here, Kelly. I'm done talking.
No, but I get what you're trying to say. It's like when you're on to something good, you don't want to put it to the side for something that you're not sure about. Yeah. And then you don't want to risk losing and walking away from your machine too early when you've already warmed it up, and then the next person comes and hits the jackpot.
I haven't been to Las Vegas since I worked radio in Las Vegas like 100 years ago. Why would I use slots as an example? What is really wrong with me? I need. Well,
help. You know what it reminds me of? There's my very first Vegas trip. My very first Vegas trip ever was for the Radio Music Awards. So we all radio. Went.
Well, then you didn't sleep at all, basically. But
no, I was like hopped up on something for like days. It was like, so who was sponsoring? It was like some diet pill, and we were like taking it to stay awake.
Oh my! I'm telling we are not even in the midst of getting this show started. It's still new, but there is a level of subtopics that we're going to have to do for a Patreon at some point, because. Listen, Kelly has stories, honey. She has stories.
Well, that's a little tidbit of one of them. We can go into more detail about that later.
Yeah. But... I always worry to pod with you because I know a lot and I don't want to say it all. I'm like, oh, don't ask that question because she's going to be incriminated. We had fun in our 20s. We look just as sexy as we do now then. It's just what it is. And you know, kiss my ass if you don't like it. I'm kidding. It was a great episode. Did we cover it all?
I mean, pretty much.
I love that we got the Huffington Post print edition. That was of course fun. And
they're in it.
And they're in it with their respective opinions. And I think what's interesting was the early on too, he finds an aisle dedicated to lube. And I think you have to go to locations that have a lube dedicated aisle. That to me starts off the entire process of a great episode. Sorry, I just had to randomly throw a tangent out there. Back to you, sweet young lady.
I love it. And then they get their little penis puppeteer show at the end.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the bar.
Yeah. So good.
What a great way to end it.
Yeah, it gave us a lot, because I think one thing we see in season 2 and 3, we end up seeing just all these other stories about like New York life and human relationships and family banter. But in the early first 6 episodes, you really do get like this creative journey, like as if what are the steps that these two take to follow their dreams. And this was the one that if you've been following along, you're like, yay, they finally get this manager, and yay, they finally get this opportunity. And they had the balls to say, no, we're not going to touch it because it doesn't fit our vibe. And then you could only root for that, you know? Absolutely.
It's a very brave and bold thing to do. It really is, because you never know like what can happen, and to be able to have the guts to kind of do that is.
And at this moment, we don't need to know if Arthur's going to be a good father, because that situation does not come to fruition.
I know.
And therefore, Billy doesn't need to get another, good girlfriend, because, his girl is going to still be, childless, and they could run amok. So it was a win-win-win, probably one of the most warm episodes of the entire first season.
It really was.
Yeah. Well, that wraps it up. Any other comments that you want to make just creatively in your own journeys, Kellie, that's relatable to what we saw?
No, I think one of the best things that you can take from it is, definitely don't be afraid to say no. Like I was saying earlier, like I wish I would have said no to some things that, or, there was an opportunity where I actually did say no twice, and then they changed my mind, and I should have stuck with the no.
Yeah.
But, don't be afraid to use your voice. And I think that that's something that, when you're coming up in a career, sometimes you get a little bit afraid because, things are definitely different now than they were then. I mean, when we were kind of coming up before the whole Me Too thing and like all that, people were definitely a lot more mean, I think.
Yeah.
And it was, a lot harsher, and there was a lot more that they got away with then that they don't get away with now, which I think is a really good thing.
I was thinking about the TV show Entourage. Can you even do an Entourage TV show anymore? That was the fact that Entourage was on the air saying this is how it really is, even though it could have been glorified or not glorified enough. The point is, an Entourage show was so powerful because it was like, look, this is the mirror of that life. Now people would go crazy over a show like that.
Oh, so absolutely. I mean, when I watch reruns, I'm like, I get like PTSD from like shit I went through. Like it's so on point.
Yeah.
That it's, it's really interesting.
Well, then you speak to a good point, is that whatever your judgment is, it has to evolve to where you're at this time.
Right.
In particular, there should be times where you are listening a lot, and then there should be times where you're not listening. But I think above all, the number one thing I took from this is have your not necessarily an inner circle, but your couple of friends that you want to bounce the ideas off of.
Yeah.
Do not waste any time sending it to people who don't know, don't care, don't know your journey, or don't even know the craft at hand. Just keep it within the main people, because they're going to be the smartest ones to be like, oh, that might be a no, or that might be a yes. If you take an opportunity that looks like an opportunity to somebody who doesn't know otherwise, they're just going to say, well, it's money. You want to be a comedy writer. Shouldn't the answer be yes? So you need to make sure that you have that. And so that's what I liked about it. Wow. I did not sweat on today's episode. I did not talk shit about anybody. I of course said I don't like the cleats and the the what is the bat, the Louisville Slugger. I think I got that for my 12-year-old birthday, and I thought you could have got me a microphone or tickets to a Janet Jackson concert. Like, let's get with the program. That's a tangent. We'll get to that later. My name has been RandomlyRJ.com. And as a note, there is another series on the YouTube playlist called Another Random Recap. So it's very much in the vein of TV recaps. More so some of the MTV shows, not what me and Kellie do, but it's also tons of fun as a if you like this, you're going to love that type of deal, and vice versa. Yeah. And what about you?
Awesome. Well, you can find me at Kellie with an IE079 on all of the social media channels. So, come follow me. I'm going to start posting some really funny stories of things that I found when I thought I wanted to be a film writer. So I'm going to start sharing that. online.
Wow,
You
she's
guys
an
can see some of the,
influencer.
you can start seeing some of the stories that I thought I wanted to be a writer, and then maybe you'll realize why I never became one.
It's not too late. It's not too late. You could do it whenever you
No,
want.
it's not. So that's gonna be kind of fun.
I love that she's an influencer. You write the script and I'll try to act in it. And then we'll put that somewhere. Not on this show. We don't want to waste the eyeballs and the eardrums of people who enjoy this. This is somewhere else. It'll go somewhere else. Thank you for watching.
After show.
After show. You got paid for that. Grant, make sure you check out Grant's Rants because he was the one who did our unnecessary difficulties segment. And of course, difficultpodcasters.com for all of the episodes. That's it. I hear noise in the background and it's pissing me off, Kelly. So I got to say goodbye.